Greet your neighbor. Yes. Today's invocation will be given by Major. Today's invocation will be given by Major Connie Higgins.
Let's pray together. Lord, we are thankful for this day that you have given to us, for its blessings, its opportunities, and even its challenges, Lord. Help us to appreciate each day that comes to us and give us strength and guidance for each and every day, for each duty and each day's problems as well. Lord, may we be challenged to give our best always and be assured of your presence with us. And Lord, also thank you for the food that was been prepared for us today and for those hands that have prepared it. In your name we pray. Amen.
On a sad note, we learned this morning of the passing of Walt Groschke. He was a 16th-year member. We also learned just recently of the passing of Becky Foster's husband, John. We will be having a recognition of Walt's years of service to Rotary next Monday. Let's have a moment of silence for both of you. Thank you. Over the last couple of years, we've lost many of our senior Rotarians. And, it's not one of the more pleasant things we have. On a happier note, we have been getting a little needed rain, and I'm sure our farmers are happy about that. And finally, on this date in 1536, the English Parliament passed an act declaring the authority of the Pope void in England. I'm sure that one made it. Now, Secretary Lynn and Secretary.
Thank you, President Greg. It's always a joy to welcome the visiting Rotarian. Sue Marzano is with us from the Canton.
Sorry about that, but we have millions of dollars in going to farm, but we know we guys have been helping take the happy to be here.
Thank you. Melanie Garcia has the traveling microphone. We'll start with Joel Montgomery.
My guest today is Mayor Bob President.
And across the room, Dr. Kiefer.
My guest is to Paul, David Wooster, as colleagues.
Commissioner Amstutz has a guest, and after that, Jim Webster and Justin Starland have announcements.
I'm introducing today a friend of mine, Dan Hedinger, who moved here from Colorado recently and is I don't know, is it your fourth career as a head of Best Care Ministries here in our county. Glad to have him here.
If you were one of the ones that ordered a sign for the tree that you're sponsoring, please see me after the meeting. I have a proof for you to approve. Thank you.
Hard to believe, 10 years ago, Paul Fryman, who knows Paul Fryman, started a little business in downtown Worcester called JAFB. Now, that brewery now is absolutely extremely popular, one of the top breweries in the state of Ohio, and they're celebrating their 10th anniversary. So what the heck does that have to do with Wooster Rotary, right? Paul came to the new leadership and sent a letter to our board that we met last Wednesday and said, hey, I need some help. I'd like to partner with Wooster Rotary on our 10-year celebration. So what does that entail? Paul is interested in highlighting our Parade of Flags program project, and he has most recently talked about how his family really enjoys the community flag project down at the fairgrounds tonight. He would love to give us a donation during his 10th year, but there's a little give and take. The exchange is that he wants to partner, obviously, a nonprofit on securing a liquor license for his event right outside of his brewery. So for those who like liquor law, which it's interesting, he cannot serve right off of his premises, so is interested in partnering with a nonprofit to do so, and said, of all projects, I would like to highlight the Wooster Rotary Parade of Flags. So pretty unique opportunity for us. There was a lot of discussion at the board about it. I know, Dallas, you mentioned the idea of young awareness, maybe to the younger generation as well. So we think it's a really good idea. I know, Joy, you had talked about us doing some marketing with the event as well. So the board did approve us partnering with him. So over the next couple months, you will see some pieces coming together. Our requirement is really to volunteer and assist with pouring of beer, which some of us are pretty good at. So if there's any questions on that, let us know. But we would get a donation and back for partnering with Paul and in the celebration of our 10th anniversary of GFP. So yes, Melanie. The date, yes, thank you. That might help. Mid-September, he does not have the exact date. We're meeting with him right after the meeting today, but mid-September, it'll be in between the fair and Worcester Fest. Okay. If there's any questions, feel free to send myself a note or President Long, and we'll make sure we get back to you. Thank you.
The date is September 17th. Sorry, Justin, I couldn't help it. So on your table, I know this was mentioned last week, Meals with a Mission is coming up on Monday, August 8th from 4 to 7. We did minimize the time by an hour because people usually come early, so that last hour is pretty slow. So we changed that from 4 to 8 to 4 to 7. The meals are brisket, barbecue chicken, and the zoodle bowl. So there is a vegetarian option for those that have asked. We will have live music. We've got some really fun raffle prizes planned. So we encourage you to buy tickets. We are asking that each member purchase or sell 4 tickets. I know some of you have already gone above and beyond, and we really appreciate your support with that. We will have live music. I think I mentioned that. And just a reminder, this replaced the auction, which used to be the large fundraiser for the club. So we just really appreciate your support for this event.
Thank you. These are 2 very important events. I'm excited about the new one. I think it's a good way for us to promote the flags, but to help do this. And our role is not that big, but I think it can be a nice addition to our array of fundraisers. And of course, Meals with a Mission, we'd appreciate that all of you can buy or sell 4 tickets, and the food was outstanding last year, and Greg has kept the price the same to us, so it's gonna be pretty nice, and hopefully the weather will cooperate. I do welcome our guests today, Drew, Dan, Mayor Bob, always nice to see you, and visiting Rotarian Sue. So on that note, today's speaker will be introduced by Chad Bowman.
Thank you, President Greg. It's my honor to introduce a fellow Rotarian, Ron Ostos. He's serving in his 6th year as Wayne County Commissioner. Prior to this, he served for 36 years in the Ohio House and Senate, including 2 years as Speaker pro tempore. In recent years, Commissioner Ostos has been active within our community criminal justice system, helping guide initiatives that better address recovery for young people and adults who fall into criminal endeavors. Prior to public service, Ron worked as a writer, a photographer, and a bureau editor for the Daily Record. He's been in Rotary since 1972, first in Orville, and then the last 40 years here in Worcester. Ron grew up on a dairy farm in rural Wayne County. He's a graduate of Central Christian High School, which I asked him, I said, I didn't realize it was looking that long. Sorry, Ron. But he holds a BA in government communications from Capital University. Ron and his wife Joanne have been Worcester residents since their marriage 41 years ago. They're members of the Worcester Grace Church and have 2 adult children and 3 grandchildren. Fellow Rotarians, please welcome Ron Ostos.
Thank you very much, Chad. I look forward to this few minutes with you to give you a sense for what's going on in our county, especially in the county government. So if things go right, we'll have some time for questions and discussion if there's any at the end here. So much like the state of the city report, what you're going to hear today is going to be focused a lot on county government, although not entirely. I'm going to lay out more than a dozen projects that we've been involved in last year, this year, and next year. It's going to feature those high priority projects primarily. You know, we're really thankful at the county level to have come through a COVID pandemic in better shape than you might have expected. We're thankful for that, although it took a pretty heavy toll on many of our employees who had to continue providing critical services during that time. I'm going to start with a slide, though, that we actually heard in the mayor's State of the City address, because it's cause for celebration. There is a company called Polycon that takes 23 economic factors that are tracked by the federal government and analyzes them over a trend of 19 years to determine which metropolitans and micropolitans are performing well and how they rank across the whole nation. Now we're a micropolitan. There are 543 of those across the nation. So to be classed as a micropolitan, you need 2 things. You need a city population like Worcester that's between 10,000 and 50,000, and you need at least 1 county, and that's us. So what you see on the screen here is our ranking over the past 10 years. It's quite a blessing that we've had a rise from 167 to 5th, 7th, and 14th in more recent years. I'm going to leave it at that, but that's a real indication of at least one important measure of the health and well-being of our county and, of course, our city of Worcester. So I'm going to take a little bit of time to do, a lot of people find the county government a little mysterious. So I'm going to take a few minutes to kind of lay out the groundwork here, put some context on these projects I'm going to talk to you about. What I have on the screen here are the 16 elected officials at the county level that we have here. In a way, a lot of these elected officials have independent authority for the various functions that they're it comes with their office. But the other thing I'll say, I'm not going to read all these, but the middle column and the right-hand column represent the justice system in our county. So it's a substantial group of elected officials that are in that world. And I'm going to come back to that in some of the reporting. Although there are independent authority elements for all these elected officials, the county commissioners have some responsibilities that extend to all those in the classic check and balance system that we see at all levels of government. The county commissioners have the duty to authorize appropriations and other actions that have to do with the expenditure of county funds. And we also have the duty to provide facilities for all county offices. So those are a couple of things that are our responsibility. We do serve as kind of the front steps or front stage for the kind of transparency purpose of a lot of the public policy and administrative activities that happen in county government. So we consider and enact a range of public policies that apply to our citizenry across the county, and in other cases internally for the operations within our county government. Those are more the legislative duties that we have as commissioners, but we also have administrative duties. And again, I'm not going to read through this, but these are the many service functions that are managed directly by the commission. That's quite a list. An example of one of the things that would not be required, many of these are required by state law, but some of them are choices that the county has made over the years to exercise. And an example of that would be our airport. For many years, it had a board that oversaw the airport, but there was a consensus that developed not that many years ago that it would be more efficient to have a day-to-day management function come out of the commissioner's office. So we've had that, I think it's since 2015. So that's an example of an optional direction that this county is taking. Another example would be our economic development function, which is optional under state law, but there are 4 options that a county can take for going forward if you want to provide economic development services. And years ago, our county decided to take the 4th option that's in the revised code, and that is to partner with a nonprofit collaborative, and that's the Wayne Economic Development Council, WEDC. So again, I'm not going to read through all these, but those functions that are listed there on the screen represent about 235 employees. But across county government, we have more like 800 employees in county government. And our health insurance program, which is available as a self-insured pool, has over 1,000 members, because many local governments also are part of our health insurance program. So I mentioned the WEDC. That's only one example of a collaborative that we have. If you look on the screen, there is a 5-county collaborative that we're part of for juvenile detention, and there's a 3-county joint venture for solid waste. But now I'm going to put up a really long list, which again, I'm not going to read through, but these are just not all, but many of the organizations that we have a stake in and a role in as county commissioners. We don't lead most of these organizations, but we sit on many of them, or we appoint to many of them. And in other cases, we help, we provide funding, support, or help to secure funding support for many of these organizations. And there's a lot of, makes life interesting in the commissioner's office. So next, I'm going to share 4 numbers on this slide. And then on the next slide, I'll share 2 more. And that's just a real quick overview of some of our finances to kind of give you a sense for that. This year, our Board of Commissioners authorized spending in our general fund of $28 million. And when you put all the funds together as a package, it was $134 million. The general fund is where general taxes are collected and other revenues that are general in nature. And it's watched probably the closest by many. The sales tax is by far the largest part of this fund that it contributes a great deal to our revenues. I want to point out that our share of the revenue from the sales tax, we pay 6.5% here in our county, but 0.75% inside that is what the county gets. And that's one of, I can count on one hand the number of counties that have that lower rate. So we're actually one of the lowest rate sales tax counties in our state. We're kind of proud of that. Now inside this general fund, about over half of it goes for the criminal justice system, and inside that, about half of it goes for the sheriff's office, which includes the operation of jail. Now, when you get to our all funds total, that's where you get into dedicated revenue streams, where there's maybe a levy that supports a specific function, or where we have enterprise operations in the airport. Would be an example of county engineer, our Wayne County Home Care Center, operations like that, our wastewater treatment systems. These are all in other funds. We have lots of funds. That's kind of how government operates. So now let me get down to these percentages. It really surprised us that last year, our general fund, which is where the tax money comes in, grew 12.5% over the previous year. We didn't really see that coming. And probably part of it was a recovery from the pandemic, but we think another part of it was the state legislature took advantage of a recent U.S. Supreme Court decision to require collecting when people buy outside of state, you owe the sales tax, but the collection has been difficult. But the states did a lot of work to make it easier for retailers to collect across state boundaries on the different rates and situations. So that has probably helped our revenue quite a bit along with the state's revenue. So we think that's one of the factors that was at play here. But the thing that's also interesting is we thought we were going to take a huge hit in 2020 from the pandemic, and we ended up still with a 1.8% revenue growth in our general fund. And that's the base that we compare the 12.5% increase onto. So those are pretty good numbers. But we're going to actually plan to use some of that growth, move it into the capital fund to help fund the jail project that I'm going to talk to you about in a little bit. And some of the money also has been used to try to help as best we can to stay competitive with our employees on compensation. That's been a challenge for all of us. All right, let me go to the other two numbers. Separate from the accounting that I just described, we've got a lot of federal money that's been coming in. We had $6.7 million come in the first tranche of federal activity, granting money related to the pandemic in a number of ways. And that $6.7 million all had to be spent by the end of last year, and it was. It went mainly to defray a range of costs inside county government offices that were used to protect the public and our employees as they continue to provide services. We also were able to provide several forms of community assistance with those funds. And now we're navigating through this larger grant amount, that $22.3 million. We have two primary targets in mind for these funds: the jail project that I already touched on, and I'll talk about some more, plus some wastewater system initiatives. We think there's a way, we're pretty sure there's a way to use at least 10 million of that money on our jail construction project. And we're also in the process of having our architects and engineers cost out other qualifying parts of the jail project, plus the costs of some sewer projects. So when we have a better handle on those cost estimates, we will consider a wide range of possible uses for any remaining funds in that 22.3 million amount. That's a lot of money. I might note that these funds are accounted for separately from those percentages and other numbers that I just gave you. So I picked those numbers so they wouldn't get confused with some of the things I'm talking about here. Now, the remainder of this report is going to be on priority projects from last year, this year, and next year. And I'm going to touch on more than a dozen of those. Hopefully in the next 10 minutes, we have some time for questions. You can loosely group these in two categories: criminal justice system and projects that support the vitality, development, and health of our county, across the county. So let's look at criminal justice a little bit. I'm going to touch on five projects: a strategic action plan, the jail renovation and expansion, relocating our common pleas adult probation, building a Marks communication tower, and supporting juvenile courts alternatives to detention. The other category, I'm calling it community vitality. I'm going to have quite a few, I think it's 9 different things I'm going to touch on there. So that will mean I need to stay on track here. I have the time showing down. So let's see if that ends up meaning anything. All right. In criminal justice, the commissioners asked a 25-member board that's been around for quite a few years to take on a project of developing a strategic action plan for the next 3 years. And they spent last year doing that. And now we're in implementation stage. I think let me just say that 25 members, I think Mayor Brenneman's on it. There's law enforcement, there are commissioners, judges, and some of the providers that do work in the criminal justice area in the community are also on this board. But we came up with 6 strategic goals, and I think it's probably, you could probably describe them as that big, hairy, audacious kind of plan. It's pretty big, and I'm going to list these. Now, if these looks familiar, Captain Richards was here not that long ago and talked the whole program about that. So I'm just going to read through these and not belabor them, but there's a lot on these goals that we're working on. Reduce recidivism and increase alternatives to incarceration is goal 1. Second one is county jail renovation and expansion goal, which I'll talk a little bit more about. To strengthen coordination within and across the justice system, improve our data collection and reporting, and inform the community about what's going on in the justice system, and then focus on prevention strategies. Those are all really big goals, but it's exciting to have them with specific sub goals that are already being worked on. All right, let's talk about the jail a little bit. Our justice center includes the county jail, and it's pushing 50 years in age. It was constructed a long time ago, and by almost any measure is undersized. And you might recall that in 2018, the commissioners put a sales tax levy on the ballot with the idea of paying for a project and operating it then after it was paid for. And that went down really bad, 62% no vote. So that was not a non-starter. But we went back to the drawing board, and in order to bring the costs down, we decided to take a little different approach and to build a smaller extension and do more renovation in dormitory style within the current jail in order to use that facility more efficiently. And we think now we can do that without raising taxes by some of these new revenue sources that have come up. I've already touched on a couple of them. We'll have reserves in the capital fund, and we'll have to do a modest bond issue to fill the final gap. Well, our last estimate was 32 million, but I've been watching what's going on in the market, and if it stays at that, I'll be shot, so it's probably gonna go out. Right now, the architect is doing detailed design this year, so we're hoping to construct the first phase next year and the final second phase in the renovation the year after that. Now, this is not a commercial for Bogner, even though you can see this crane in the left side of it, but it's I think it was about 10 years ago that the whole county went to a new method for doing radio communications across many agencies, including local and state. The MARC system stands for Multi-Agency Radio Communications System. And we built several towers with state funding, and now we finally have funding for what we think is our last needed. If you go to Fredericksburg, you know you're way down, and they have very poor radio communications in all these emergency and other services because of that. So we finally, in large part, thanks to our two state legislators, got enough funding in a couple tranches to pay for that tower, which we think is going to be built this year. So that will be another enhancement. Once that tower is built, it'll join all the other towers across the state. The state will own it and operate it, but we're paying for its construction. All right. We've decided, because it seems like underground water gets pretty close to the surface in Worcester, various places, including right on the square at the county courthouse. We tried to help that lower level, but we haven't been entirely successful. So we decided it's time to move the common pleas adult probation out of that space. And so the law library, which is in a building connected to the courthouse, right next to it, the Amsterdam Frick building, has a beautiful space that's now being built out for adult probation. And we build out a nice space in our newer municipal court building in the lower level for the law library. And that's on actually ahead of schedule, and it should be finished this year. So we're excited about that upgrade for those folks. Furthermore, we've been working with our juvenile court now for a number of years on an exciting project. In fact, our member, I don't see her here today, but the judge should probably come give us a report on that someday. It's very interesting what she's been able to do and her team in diverting more and more juveniles from, a lot of times their problems aren't what they've done, although they do things. It's what's going on at home and then their other peer environments. And so those things need to be addressed in ways that aren't always appropriately dealt with by incarceration. So progress is being made. Let's move on to community vitality here. Yeah, I'm running out of time. I'm gonna keep moving. Here's the list of things I'm going to touch on briefly: some subdivision and road access regulations, wastewater treatment systems, airport improvements, our land bank, community improvement corporation, economic development financing tools, a transportation improvement district, and the Red Cross and health department buildings. Bringing this slide back up because it is it's probably it's a stock slide. It's probably a planned unit development in an urban area somewhere, but it's been intriguing to me that potentially Wayne County could have something like that in our subdivision regulations that would help protect farmland and open space at the same time that we allow the market to work to build housing. I don't know if we're going to succeed at that. We've been working on subdivision regulations last year and now again this year, and we have some draft regulations that we're still working through, but I am hopeful that we can make some changes in that area. You may know that in Wayne County, outside the municipalities, there is no zoning except in Chippewa Township. So that's often a tool that's used to try to manage how things develop. But it probably can be debated how effective those zoning are out in the rural areas. But nevertheless, we're wrestling with that right now. Now, here's out of our comprehensive plan that we passed a couple of years ago. It's a pretty big update. This is just a picture of prime farmland in dark green out of that comprehensive plan. And the lighter green are areas that could also be prime if they had better drainage. So that's kind of interesting. It's a lot of land. Now, this slide is also out of the comprehensive plan. It shows in purple the areas that are likely to be current growth areas. And if you look, they're all municipalities. That's been a long-standing policy, at least stated policy in the counties. We want the growth to happen in our municipal areas that have the infrastructure to support that kind of residential growth in particular. And then the lighter sort of pink colors would be growth coming down the road here pretty soon. Now, it's one thing to have that policy, it's another thing to actually make it happen, or to nudge it to happen in the marketplace. And that's kind of what I was talking about with the subdivision regulations. It's a challenge. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Wastewater treatment. We have quite a few wastewater treatment systems that the county operates. They're all small, and they all struggle to break even because they're small. It's a rare year when more than one actually does break even. And interestingly, most of those customers, much all of them, pay monthly about what a Worcester City resident pays for all their city utilities. So it's expensive to live out in the county on a rural treatment system. But what we're actually looking at trying to do now, especially in Sterling, is to get ahead of the curve. All these plants were built not because the county wanted to, but because EPA said you will do it to deal with usually failing septic systems across the county. So we're thinking, well, let's get proactive and try to use some of the grant money that's available to help Sterling deal with it. It's probably at the top of the list of having issues that are going to be coming soon from the EPA. Try to be a little proactive if possible. We'll see if we're successful. I'm running out of time, so I wanted a couple minutes for questions, so I'm going to speed up here a little more. Our airport is a huge asset for the county. We have just finished a full-length runway that parallels the mile-long taxiway, and we're now going to be doing long-term planning for airport development. Again, that project, by the way, was paid for almost entirely by the Federal Aviation Administration. So a couple of years ago, I think a year and a half ago, we created the it's often referred to as the land bank, but technically it's the Wayne County Land Reutilization Corporation. And what it does is so far it's taken 5 buildings that were underwater, maybe with tax liens or abandoned even. I don't know if we had any of those, but they speed up the whole process, allowing them to be rejuvenated by the private sector. And this is the first example of what was able to happen through that mechanism that was recently created. So it seems to be starting to make some difference to make our communities a little better places. A couple more things. Our Community Improvement Corporation, it's been our goal, I would chance this on that, to make that a more effective, active organization to help our county get stronger. We recently transitioned some county-owned warehouse space near the square to Ace Hardware to facilitate their redo of that space. We've also helped the Village of Dalton to establish community reinvestment area, CRA, to create tax incentives for the downtown businesses to renovate and upgrade their presence in Dalton. We're hoping that template can be used in some of the other communities around the county to incent redevelopment and make some of our communities even stronger than they are now. The WDC and our planning department are working together cooperatively to promote this kind of development. All right. We also recently formed a transportation improvement district, and we've had some success in several grants coming actually to the city of Worcester for roadway improvements. So that's another area that we've been working on, projects and projects, lots of projects. And finally, I want to mention two buildings that have been in process for a while for transition. We recently were given the Red Cross building. We, the county, was gifted this with the idea of it becoming used by the health department, which is close by, but then the other building is pictured there. So, you know, many of you know that the community put the money up to build that building. And it was getting only really marginal use in recent years. So it makes sense to reutilize that building, and the Red Cross will continue to have access to that for blood drives and some small spaces for storage and administration, but largely it'll be used by the health department, which is in the process of finishing their design so we can do the construction or reconstruction and renovation for their use. Now, then that brings up the health department building itself, which the county also owns. And I believe the intent is to, and we've had some preliminary discussions about this, to use the CIC as a mechanism to move that into the hands of the Art Center for kind of reimagining it as a steam factory using private funds that are we're hoping will come forward from a variety of foundations that are mostly local. The STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And it's a really exciting thing because we're talking about our workforce, and our manufacturing workforce is a huge, important asset in our county. This is going to probably be targeted primarily at the middle school age kids to get them excited about some of the things, and maybe traditional making, but also lots of the new high-tech kinds of makerspace things. And I think it's going to be, from what I can tell, pretty symbiotic with the kind of COSI kind of facility that's being built over by Dalton on US 30. I think that those two will actually complement each other very well. So it's kind of exciting to see these things that could really play out for our future quite a bit. Well, I could go on, but I think it's time to see if you have any questions. Looks like I need to edit that slide a little bit, though. The S kind of fell off. But we'll see if there's any questions or discussion you want to have. I don't see anybody sleeping, so you must have a question. LA?
About the timeline for the transitioning of the health department building to the art center.
The question is, I don't know if you heard it, what's the timeline for this transition on the health department building and the Red Cross building? I'm going to hedge on that a little because I never saw anything take so long as the transition from the Red Cross to the county owning the building. I mean, it was like, how many turns does it take to screw in a light bulb? But it finally happened, and we do own it now. I know that there's been a lot of work on the design, but I kind of think the health department might still be trying to recover from the pandemic a little bit. So it's not been going real fast. It's scheduled to have that construction happen yet this year, but I'm going to say it's not moving very fast. The legacy building come after that, and that's going to depend on funding, which I think is in the quiet phase of development now. Thanks for the question. All right.
Very good. Thank you, Ron. In appreciation for your time with us today, we'd like to present you with this rendition of the rotary wheel with the four-way test on the back. I'm sure 50 or 40-year Rotarian knows all about the four-way test. Made locally by the students at the Village Network. We are pleased to have our guests here today, and we hope you can join us again Next week, we have two of our newer members giving classification talks, and Katie is going to give us an update on the storm damage and relief efforts. And all of you have a good, safe week, and we stand adjourned.